Okay, so you're very welcome back to our Daisha Couch. Our last time on the Daisha Couch for the 2024 general election. I'm joined by Dimphna to look back on what has transpired over the past 2 days. And of course, within the past few minutes, we've seen our final TD elected for Waterford, Dimphna, Conor McGuinness. So it ended up Conor McGuinness 9,519, Matt Shanahan 8,526, and it was clear to see what this result meant to everyone involved in Sinn Féin in Waterford.
It was. I mean, this is a historic moment for Sinn Féin, and you can see quite a lot of tears downstairs. And these would be from people who are party members for a very, very long time. Party members who were probably used to the party, quite often being on the periphery of politics locally and nationally. To see, I mean, Waterford typically wouldn't be a huge Sinn Féin constituency. To see a two-seater Sinn Féin constituency out of 4 seats, 50% of our seats are now Sinn Féin. That's a massive win, a massive achievement for the party, but particularly for Conor McGuinness. I mean, he had played the long game. He knew what he was doing. This was always going to be his intention. He had the van decked out with the artwork for a long, long time. He knew what he was going to do, and he had strong support from Unrhyne, from Dungarvan, from Lismore, from the West. The people wanted representation, and that is after speaking for itself here.
And I think there was a question mark, wasn't there, over whether or not that message of elected TD for West Waterford would connect with people in West Waterford. Now, of course, all of the TDs who are elected for Waterford will say they work for all of Waterford, but there is this geographic disparity perhaps, and on his posters he very clearly said that message. There was a clear Sinn Féin effort to vote manage in terms of giving Conor the West, and it has obviously paid off.
It has paid off, and I will always say that in general elections, yes, in locals, but certainly in generals, you are voting for a party and you are voting for a candidate from a particular party or as an independent, but you're also voting for the individual. And I think if you're living in the west of Waterford, you can maybe feel quite disconnected from your representatives because meetings will take place in Waterford City. Yes, they sit in Dungarvan, but there's an argument that you could perhaps feel quite unheard, quite forgotten. What Conor did was clever, and it's probably what helped John Cummins also, is that you're going out into the community, you're attending events that might be smaller events and you wouldn't think necessarily somebody would attend them if they're canvassing as a TD. He has made himself known, he has attended public meetings, he has attended openings, events. He completely ingrained himself within the community of West Waterford. It has absolutely paid off because not only do people know unequivocally who Conor McGuinness is and what party he stands for, they've now elected him.
And of course, you mentioned one of the other TDs who was elected here today, John Cummins, a senator who has really been around the block, you know, served as a councillor, served as mayor of Waterford, comes from a huge tradition. He finally saw it across the line today. John Cummins, TD, Fine Gael TD for Waterford.
John Cummins has fought hard for this seat. He has. In the 2020 general elections, we saw John Cummins fight tooth and nail, coming from a councillor, local council background. And of course, his father, Morris, would be hugely involved in politics and always has been historically. But John knew what he wanted to do to run in the 2020 general elections. He had more first preference votes at the time than Marco Kohosig. But at the time, the public decided they wanted something different. They didn't want the main parties. They wanted to vote Green. And Marco Kohosig did quite well, and he clinched that final seat in the very small hours of the morning. John Cummins at the time was extremely upset, as you can understand, and we'll come to other candidates who are very upset after today's votes and today's decisions. However, John Cummins' decision, I think, to become a senator, that was probably the most clever move he's made in his political career because it gave him a platform to speak out about Waterford. It gave him a platform to be part of a party that had money and political backing behind it, where he could influence change, where people felt that they were actually being represented. And he has spent his time as a senator quite cleverly, and he has now been elected. And I think that he deserves that seat.
And looking, of course, at our fourth seat, Fianna Fáil's Mary Butler, this is the third time which she has been elected for the Waterford constituency. And in line with the huge vote which we've seen right across the country for Fianna Fáil, significantly different to what the exit poll suggested. It was clear to see that everyone here involved in Fianna Fáil earlier was really delighted with their result.
They were thrilled. And again, at the beginning of a campaign like this, you just don't know what way a general election is going to go. The exit polls always come with a health warning. They're always going to be a few percent either way. But it did seem at the time as though there was huge popularity for Sinn Féin, streets ahead of the other major political parties. But Fianna Fáil here in Waterford do have unwavering support, and Mary Butler in particular has unwavering support. She's very well known within her community of Portlaw, but within the wider community of Waterford, and having a position as Junior Minister for Mental Health and Older People, she has been front and centre in every headline. She has opened up, particularly in the past year, about her own personal struggles, because as we know, being a politician means nothing is private. And that's not a terrific place to be, I think, mentally. But your family tragedies, your family traumas, your personal traumas are put on a national stage for people to look at. That's not an easy place to be. Mary Butler has weathered the storm of the last year, and the people have turned out en masse to vote for her in a much higher percentage than they did in 2020.
And of course, it hasn't been the same story for some of our sitting TDs. You mentioned one of those casualties, Mark O'Cahasick. But before we get to him, of course, independent TD Matt Shanahan, the fight for that last seat with Conor McGuinness involved Conor and Matt. And it was touch and go there for a while.
It was touch and go. We were looking yesterday at about approximately 1,200 votes in the difference with Conor McGuinness ahead. We did think that Mary Roche's transfers were going to benefit Matt Shanahan because he is an independent. It's a case of, vote left, transfer left. And geographically even, I would have presumed that a higher volume of Mary's votes would have gone to Matt. At the end, there was 993 votes between Conor McGuinness and Matt Shanahan. Now, I know that you were speaking to Conor McGuinness at the end as he was celebrating with his loved ones. I did look for Matt and he was outside and I did have a conversation with him. He was quite emotional, as you can understand. I mean, Matt entered local politics here in 2018 and he was elected as a TD in 2020. Matt has always put Waterford front and centre, and it's not an easy thing to do when you're an independent TD because you don't have political backing behind you, you don't have unlimited finances, you don't have a campaign manager. There's many things you don't have. It is very, very difficult to run and remain as an independent, which is why we often see people start as an independent and move to become part of a party because it is easier to get things done that way. Matt has always had unwavering support for 24/7 cardiac care. He has always put that front and centre. The same with the airport, with SETU. The big things that matter in Waterford, Matt has always spoken about them. The last week or so, he spoke to me about this outside. He said he doesn't know whether his mistake or his blunder over the last week had cost him. He said he didn't think it cost him too much, but he was too emotional to speak, and you can understand that. So I imagine over the next week or few days we will hear from Matt Shanahan. Absolutely.
I mean, it is difficult when we're looking for instant reaction, and when we consider somebody who has served as a TD for so long they have lost their seat. It's difficult to react to that.
It's extremely difficult because you're playing the political game. In most cases you start as a local councillor and you're paving the way and you think, okay, I'm ready to take this onto a national stage. And when you do, nothing is guaranteed, and there's so much online discourse in terms of people commenting about your decisions. You feel under pressure to deliver things for the county that you love and for the country that you love. And when that rug is pulled out from under you, you can't just easily refer back to being a councillor. You can't just transfer to another party. At that moment in time, everything you've worked for has been taken away. So if you have any bills that are being put through the Dáil, you don't know what's going to happen to those because you're no longer there to chase them up, to sign off, to follow them up. Matt is in limbo here.
And it will be interesting to see if the regional group of independent TDs go on to actually play a key role in the formation of the next government. Will Waterford potentially be at a loss by not having Matt Shanahan? So, I mean, there's still lots of discussions to come in relation to the formation of the next government and to see how Waterford might be at an disadvantage in that regard, but then potentially an advantage if we've Mary Butler and John Cummins in senior positions.
Very much, and I refer to your conversation earlier with Martin Cullen. Martin Cullen actually was speaking extraordinarily strongly. Of course, he's living in Florida at the moment, proud Waterford man, but he no longer lives here, and he said that he will will be looking to Mary Butler and to John Cummins now to make things happen. He called it a disgrace that we don't have 24/7 cardiac care. He referred to many things that we have been fighting for such a very long time. We still don't have. However, Mary Butler, we know, had a junior ministerial position. Mary stands a good chance of having a ministerial position this time round. John Cummins is a very strong voice. I know that he is well thought of within Fine Gael. John also stands a strong choice, or a strong chance rather, of receiving a position this time round, and I can only hope that means we will have representation for Waterford. It has never been more important. We are, as you know, hugely underfunded. There is so much that needs to be done, and a lot of people have built the paving stones, but that work needs to continue, and these are our 4 seats that will ideally make that happen.
And of course, losing out Mark O'Cahisick of the Green Party, who we heard from yesterday. A huge drop in support for the Green Party right across the country. That was seen here as well in Waterford. Mark O'Cahisick said he stood over his time, obviously, as a TD, the work he has done, the decisions he has made. But do you think locally for Mark that it came down to Waterford Airport in the end?
It did. I was speaking to another member of the Green Party, and I won't name this individual, but this person said to me that whenever Eamon Ryan opened his mouth, it was a nail in the coffin for the future of the Green Party. And I think that's maybe the sentiments that many members of the Green Party want to say but can't say. I cannot categorically say what Mark viewed, I suppose. I did ask him, and he did tell me, for the record, and you would have heard it on our bulletins on WLR, that he thinks that Eamon Ryan has left a lasting legacy in a positive way that people in Waterford will look back on in years to come for everything that was done. He referred to the business case and he said it simply wasn't strong enough, and that's where we fell down. But interestingly enough, Mark said to me, people who voted for Greens in 2020 were climate conscious and they were very aware of what was coming down the line and they wanted change. He said they don't want that anymore. You know, they're not as climate led. Now he's hearing about pensions. He's hearing, to a small degree, to be fair, about immigration, but it's the money in our pockets rather than climate change, because I think a lot of what he heard on the doorsteps was that changes to implement sustainable measures within your home and your businesses cost money that during a time where cost of living has never been higher, people simply don't have. And
the Green Party, it could be argued, got the brunt of the electorate's anger, perhaps. I mean, if we're looking at Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, they were in the last government, they got a great vote. It was interesting to hear the comments from Labour candidate Saoimh O'Neill, who referenced how the voters have responded to the Greens and how that should perhaps be a warning to Labour.
I agree. I think that this is a cautionary tale for any party, because when you see the Green Party, they were always a very minor but solid party who came into power almost unexpectedly, I would dare say, in 2020. And that support is almost completely gone. We've seen them be almost wiped out and decimated on a national level, which is devastating for any party to see when you truly believe in what they stand for. So if you do see now a rainbow coalition where you have Fianna Fáil, you have Fine Gael, and arguably you have Social Democrats, or you have Labour, or you have the Independents, you run the risk of damaging what your party stands for. You run the risk of being ripped to bits because you're buddying up with a party that you don't necessarily agree with what they stand for. It's a very risky thing. It's going to take a long time for Ireland to iron out how this government is going to be formed. And I think it will be interesting, Kieran, dare I say.
Certainly interesting days ahead, Nympna. Well, that concludes our live stream here from SETU on the Cork Road. Thank you to everybody who made this possible, everybody in WLR, everybody in SETU. Special mention to Dean and Keane, who have done such Trojan work here in getting this set up established. To all of our colleagues on the news and current affairs team, everybody in WLR who really made all of the coverage on air and online possible. It was great to be part of it, and we hope we kept Waterford up to date. I think we did. Every time we logged in, we saw huge volumes of people at home. And actually, what I did notice yesterday was there were a lot less bodies on the ground downstairs than you'd normally see at an election. And it is purely because people were at home, in the pyjamas probably, watching everything happen from the comfort of their sitting room. It is exactly what we wanted to do. What we've done here might seem really easy. There's a huge team behind us here, technological expertise I could never hope to have. It has been an absolute pleasure, Kieran Foley, and one day in the
not too near future, we will do this all
We'll
again.
do it all again for another election. That's it, absolutely. So from the SETU Arena, it's a good evening, but do keep in touch on air and online. There'll be much further analysis, of course, on Daoise today, tomorrow, and across all of our news bulletins as well.